Okay, so in today's video I want to talk about the I'm trying to start the whole conversation so that I'm not jumping ahead of, you know, the initial of the information. So hold on one second. Okay, so the most sinister things that I have ever seen with the sub programs that involves the MK Ultra program that fraction of the U.S. government was working on was the MK Ultra that became a sub, program within different neurological and as well as um, different psychological behavior study, mood changes with different cybernetics chipped inside people's brains that had fiber optic cables reading and writing people's moods and things like that. That was way back in the past. Now the program is way more sophisticated. It involves technology, psychological, neural logic study of how the brain function. It goes all the way down with the DNA, how they studied the DNA, how they were able to replicate human DNA, how they were able to fusion different DNAs from multiple animals, I'm talking about animals infuse with the human DNA, and they are able to reproduce a different form of human, like a hybrid. And they were able to study this by, because at that time they were trying to override a person's brain. They were trying to delete a person's their own natural DNA form, and they had a lot of failures. A lot of kids, people lives got destroyed because of these programs. And there's hundreds of different documentary online that was already published about this. This is nothing new. But I want to talk about some of the things that nobody has talked about yet. That it is included with the MK Ultra neural psychological as well as cybernetics that infuses people's brains and implanted chips inside their skulls so that they can rewrite and reprogram a human emotional state. They can make you angry. They can make you very sad. They can make you very depressed. They can make you do everything. If you feel anger, you no longer feel anger instantaneously. Basically, if you have bipolar disorder, they were able to study, analyze, and rewrite those biological as well as your DNA. They were able to rewrite and recode the DNA by trying to change the person's behavior through these chips that was infused on their brain that would beam different frequencies, and they were able to study the person's psychological behavior, and they were able to rewrite a person's psychological behavior that way. And they tried that with animals. They tried that with all sorts of things. They tried with the bull. They were able to make the bull no longer fight. Whoever was aggravating the bull, they were able to make all the alpha males within a monkey community, be the weakest by, the weakest monkey in the community. Basically, had the alpha males scared of the little monkeys because they were able to train the monkeys to change people's behaviors by pushing a button and feel pleasure, feel sexual pleasure, feel all sorts of things like that. And they were playing around with this back in the day. And then the sub. Oh, and by the way, this was all funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. This was funded by half of the CIA black budget programs. Um, this is all public information, but I want to get, this is just the initiation. What I'm trying to, just, I don't know if a lot of people did the research on this, you watching, but this is how the operation began. Back in the day, back in the 50s and 60s, they were trying to rewrite a person's psychological behavior because of violence. Violence was the biggest problem in America back in the day. People were robbing banks, people were killing one another in New York City, New Jersey. It was wild, right? Everyone was very angry and agitated. A lot of people had psychological disorder, psychological problem. And then as they were proceeding with different, agencies studying people's psychological behaviors, rewriting a person's psychological patterns, and overriding people's behaviors, changing a person's thoughts, on their minds by beaming different radio frequency, radiation, and all sorts of, highly classified equipment. And that's how it all began. The MK Ultra, you got the Magistics, you got all different black budget programs that was going down at that time, and then they became part of the private sector. I would say they began doing that in between the 70s and the 80s. When they changed, when the MK Ultra programs was exposed by people within, they created subfraction of the MK Ultra programs, but within the private sector, because the government was being way too much under pressure by multiple agencies, and they were being oversighted by, people who were trying to understand why they were murdering kids on this project, and why were people having such a tremendous failure? Why were people in psychotic hospitals when they were having normal lives? Because they were angry and things like that. So it went to the private sector. The private sector has a huge black budget. Fraction of the military is hired by the private sector. 90% of all the highly classified weapon systems in the U.S. is owned by the private sectors. Private sectors meaning the previous video that I made, where how they control the entire market. That's the private sector. The private sector is basically the international community, where you got banks and the Trilateral Commission, you got all these, you got a Club of 300, you got the financial sector, you got it goes all the way back to the Club of Rome's, which is it's already an ended program. So they were changing people's behavior so that people would consume more of their products, and they created the false illusion of choice. Sorry, my AC went on here, but they created a false illusion of choice, meaning you can choose Coca-Cola or Pepsi, you can choose Walmart or Sam's Club, you can choose Sam's Clubs or BJ's, you can choose Walgreens over CVS. You can choose Cisco over Netgear. You can choose MSI versus Dell or HP. But all the investors and all the big mega financial institution who granted those small company loans and bought 60 to 70% of the shares of those companies to be able to operate, they basically own, with different proxy companies. Just like the oil boom that happened, throughout history, where they had a diversified hundreds of different oil extraction, people extracting oil all over Texas and different parts of the U.S. And out of the blue, they created lobbyist groups, environmental groups. They created all sorts of false, basically, they created all these false evidence that the world was going to end, so that they can buy and operate only their companies. Everybody else cannot, the individual people who were not inside their clubs of financial raping of America were not allowed to operate inside America. They completely destroyed small business in America and created the false illusion of choice. It includes beverages, it includes candies you chew every day, it includes everyday items, it includes Apple, Android, Windows versus Mac. What else? I mean, it's different phone companies. You got Metro PCS, but it's really, it really is T-Mobile. And then T-Mobile fights against Netgear and Verizon's versus AT&T, which is all owned by the same people, same financial institution. They own 90 to 60% of the shares of those companies. You got secret shares. You got, a lot of these companies. They operate back doors, shaking hands, with it's called with inside trading with different banks and different, Goldman Sachs and things like that. All these people, JP Morgan, all these little financial groups own a little bit of everything in America, but they're one club of people that operates within the international banking community. So I just literally wiped everything in one research for you guys. So let's go back to how they were programming people to be slaves for the rest of their lives and being consumers for the rest of their lives, being workers without the ability to become a small business, because they controlled everything and gave people the illusion of choice by creating different political party systems, who's also co-sponsored by different financial institution and corporation and lobbyist groups within DC. So the whole MK Ultra became a sub project within the private sector. The private sector, basically, they revolutionized basically they mapped out the entire human genome. They can edit, re-edit, and then recreate human DNA. They can completely artificially engineer a human being to have everything, from intelligence to emotional order to everything, to being the strongest, to being the fastest, the quickest thinking. They can make a human superhuman. And that's where the eugenics program started within subfraction of the MK Ultra, because they were creating superhumans, and they were, basically they were saying that, well, we don't need people anymore because they're stupid, and they got depression and all sorts of neurological and psychological problems, mental problems, and for them, they can just make a human much more sophisticated, much more Jonah-like, where they can control. So not only they're gonna come out with the automation, but they're gonna come out with the artificially built human beings, where they can operate at, at a pace where they won't feel emotion. They won't. Basically, it's a human robot that they're trying to build, because they can just. They were using different radiation with different frequencies, and let me turn off my AC here real quick, because this thing's gonna be on forever just because I started making the video. I don't think my AC is going to turn off, because it's gonna I'm trying to override the AC here, but the AC is not gonna turn off because it's just trying to, just turn off. Well, I hope you guys get used to this ear sound just because I'm making this video. I pushed the off button over there, but it's not turning off here because it was overwritten. because the AC was off the whole day, and then when I pushed the start button for recording, my AC is now going to be on forever, even though I turn off the AC control unit there. So anyway, hopefully you can hear my voice loud enough. So anyway, the sub MK Ultra program was basically sophisticated, upgraded, and like I was saying, they were using highly radiated radio frequencies to not only change people's moods, but also to, there you go, they can artificially change people's moods remotely. Basically, they can beam a different radio frequency into your head using your phone as the aim, right? Your phone has a MAC address that connects directly to the tower, and the tower knows exactly where you are because it communicates. So they can beam a frequency from really far away into your body, into your person, and then they can completely override how you're feeling. They can make you feel anger. They can make you feel anxiety. They can make you feel love, hate. They can make you a destructive person, and that way they can map how you're feeling. They're basically, it's like almost like a tool where you have to understand little by little. Like you beam information to a specific person, and if they feel anger by a specific frequency, then they can, okay, this person's feeling anger. You know, we can see it on camera. Okay, he's anger. He's, you know, beating things up. He's punching things around. He's anger. So this makes him angry, and this makes him, you know, sad. This makes him cry. This makes him, like, it's all by stage, and then they can understand everybody's psychological patterns remotely, literally remotely. They no longer need to implant, you know, different shit on people's head to beam that information on. So so all this information was declassified already. So I want to get into the sinister human DNA manipulation. When you hear about those crazy aliens that you see every day, you know, the gray aliens and all those crazy